I want to thank you for joining us for this ICLE webinar. We're going to be talking about the Catholic Educator Formation and Credential Program. And I'm joined by several of my colleagues, and we're going to kind of share responsibilities throughout the next 30 to 45 minutes or so. Dr. DeAnn Stuart, who leads our national cohort, will be helping to share a little bit about the CEFC program. Dr. Alyssan Barnes is also on. She's the director of the Denver and Colorado Springs cohort, as well as the Oklahoma City and Tulsa cohort. And she will be available to answer any questions pertaining to those cohorts. And our program associate, Katie Groves, is also on. She'll be gathering questions, taking care of any logistics. And today is actually her birthday. So happy birthday, Katie. We are going to, we're really appreciative that you're joining us on a Tuesday afternoon. We want to be respectful of your time. And so we are going to present for probably 30 minutes and then open it up for questions. We want to make sure that we're addressing the issues that you want to know about. So the way to pose questions would be through the Q&A button on your Zoom screen. You can enter your questions through that, and then that function will also allow other attendees who see that question and think, I was wondering the same thing. They can actually upvote that question, and it'll help us to know which questions are shared by a number of people so that we make sure to address them. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to start just by noting something that's pretty obvious to those of us who are daily involved in it, but might sometimes be overlooked in the broader culture. And that is that as Catholics, we have something pretty special when it comes to education. We have a centuries-long tradition of education in the West that is transformative and that has led to a number of innovations and advances in our society. And this is often referred to as the Catholic intellectual tradition. It is a deep resource for thinking about the relationship between faith and reason, for appreciating and studying physical realities like sciences, as well as metaphysical realities like divine revelation. And it includes a long history of forming human persons, including those most in need, and figuring out how to lead them all to wisdom. So that is our tradition. It's a tradition to be proud of and to be excited about. And yet, many Catholic schools today can end up looking a lot like other modern progressive schools. They can end up having a similar curriculum. They can exert a similar reliance on standards and assessments. They can practice similar hiring requirements, and they can experience similar burnout of their teachers and similar outcomes of their students, which often takes the form of students mastering subjects, but failing in learning how to think for themselves. So the short way of saying that is that students in modern progressive schools, as well as in many Catholic schools, can end up getting all A's, but can actually end up flunking life. In terms of their Catholic identity, we don't think it's enough simply to add a theology class on top of a normal modern progressive curriculum and call that Catholic. Although it's good to begin each classroom with prayer, we don't think that simply adding a prayer at the start makes education Catholic. This approach is what one of ICLE's friends describes as viewing faith as frosting on top of the same education that everybody else offers. And we want to do a little bit better than that. And that's the reason that ICLE exists. We exist to help the church recover and renew this venerable tradition, which is Catholic schooling. ICLE has spent the last 10 to 15 years leading this renewal by offering programs for different constituents groups that have a hand in education. So we offer programming for school leaders, for principals, for headmasters, for administrators. We also offer programming to train school superintendents about this tradition and how to help be a part of its renewal in dioceses across the country. We even offer programming for priests who serve as pastors of Catholic schools. And of course, we offer programming for teachers, for those who courageously serve on the front lines day in and day out of this renewal, working with students and their families. And that last group is the one that the CEFC program focuses on, the Catholic Educator Formation and Credential Program cares for and forms teachers. That's in our very name. Yes, we offer a credential, but first we are in the business of providing formation to Catholic educators. And then the credential communicates that formation to schools and dioceses across the country. We believe that teachers can't expect from students what they themselves as teachers lack. And therefore, we want to form teachers well so that they in turn can form students well. And we believe that the Catholic educators deserve to be formed in their own rich Catholic heritage. Unfortunately, many dioceses end up shackling themselves by imposing an unnecessary requirement for their teachers to be licensed by their state. Now, regulations about licensing differ from state to state, and so each person would need to figure out what the situation is within their own state. But it's true that many Catholic schools do not actually have to require their teachers to get a state licensure in their private school. And yet, many of them choose to do so anyway. So on the one hand, you've got parents who are choosing to forego a free public education and to pay to send their child to an explicitly Catholic school, only to have the Catholic school turn around and require that every single one of their teachers be trained by the secular state. And so we view that as problematic. And personally, I think that's like a restaurant like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse charging patrons $50 for the best cut of steak available, and then requiring that all of their chefs be trained as vegan certified chefs. It just doesn't make sense when they don't have to. The reason I say this is because I think secular state licensing programs cannot help but be different from what a Catholic school should desire in terms of teacher training. By the very fact that they are secular means they cannot help but be incomplete. What do I mean by incomplete? Well, I mean that they cannot help but ignore or implicitly deny the supernatural, the spiritual dimension of their students, the Catholic intellectual tradition, the compatibility of faith and reason. Faith often ends up being excluded into its own little private corner as a personal hobby. That's for the theology class or going to mass. But the rest of the stuff is faith. The rest of the stuff is reason and knowledge, the things you can actually give grades for. They end up often ignoring or implicitly denying the sacramental imagination, which we feel is absolutely imperative for being able to understand reality. The unity of knowledge, the fact that every branch of knowledge is held together by a single trunk, and thus allows for integration across subjects, often gets ignored. A very important one is that these secular licensing programs deny true love as constituting ultimate reality. And they also deny true love as a key to knowing that reality. It is what's known and the way to know it, ultimately. And then also the fact that there is inherent purpose in all things ends up being denied. So that list constitutes a pretty big difference when it comes to teaching reality, whether we're talking about theology or math or science or literature. These state licensing programs also have a different view of what it means to be human. And they are often hyper-focused on standards and testing, which don't actually measure all the forms of knowing that God has created, and that can end up crushing the soul, not only of students, but also of the teachers who have to do all of that grading. So the CEFC program wants to offer Catholic teachers something different, something better, something more in line with what it means to be human, and something anchored more deeply in the freedom that is available in Jesus Christ. And this is their church's own time-tested approach to forming students. This is the Catholic intellectual tradition, which contains the liberal arts, the 7 original liberal arts, and has developed them in significant ways. This is the tradition that has established libraries and kept learning alive for hundreds of years in monasteries. This is the tradition that founded the first academic guilds and universities in Europe. This is the tradition that first promoted education to the poor as well as the rich, to girls as well as to boys, to those who did not speak Latin as well as to those who did. This is the educational tradition of St. Augustine, of St. Thomas Aquinas, whose memorial we celebrate today, of Dante, as well as Thomas More and John Henry Newman and J.R.R. Tolkien. So grounded in this tradition, the CEFC offers an alternative to secular state teacher licenses. We offer a credential that is portable. You can take it from one state to another. It's recognized by many dioceses across the country. It is a pathway toward a master's degree with any of the 6 college programs that we partner with, including Belmont Abbey, Franciscan Steubenville, the Augustine Institute, the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota, and that number is growing. So this is a very strategic pathway into a master's program for those teachers who might want that in the future. We have completed 9 different cohorts so far. We are now enrolling for our 10th cohort. We've had 268 participating teachers nationally, coming from 59 different dioceses across the country. So what does this program look like? Well, it's an 18-month program. We want to take the time to form teachers deeply, but to also allow them to do that naturally as they're teaching and in a sense of community. So they go through cohorts of about 35 to 40 teachers at a time. And these cohorts will end up spending time in person as well as online. So there are 3 in-person gatherings a year. for each cohort. They start out coming together. The first thing they do is in person. It's 5 days in July. Then they come back together again for another 5 days the following January, and then a third 5 day session the following June. In between those in-person gatherings, the cohorts spend 1 hour each week on a Zoom call together, learning concrete skills that they can then implement in their classrooms that very week. And then the following week, they can come back and they can debrief, they can ask questions, they can figure out how to improve. And so they're constantly growing as teachers while they are engaged in the practice of teaching in their school. And then the teachers also receive highly personalized feedback through observations of them teaching their students in their own classroom. So they're learning and getting feedback from master teachers as they go throughout the 18 months. As I mentioned, we have several cohorts in cities, established cities, where the teachers are coming from schools within that diocese. We also have a national cohort, and that pulls from teachers anywhere in the country. For those enrolling in the national cohort, your in-person sessions beginning this summer will take place at the headquarters of the Augustine Institute in St. Louis. And if you haven't been to this facility, it's an absolutely beautiful facility. It's just the perfect venue to talk about the Catholic intellectual tradition, to eat good food, to seminar together, to worship together. It is fantastic. So for those of you applying to the national cohort, you would have that to look forward to. Who should apply? Who is this program for? As I mentioned, it is for active teachers who are already holding teaching positions so that they can pursue this training while they're teaching. Teachers from any grade, K through 12. But they do need to hold bachelor's degree and in order to receive the credential. And that in part has to do with the fact that this program is recognized for that graduate level credit if you choose to pursue that. Ideally, this program would be for new teachers who don't have a state licensure and are looking to learn skills in how to manage a classroom, how to write a lesson plan, how to think through all facets of teaching and learning through a Catholic lens. This would be for you, but we've also had a number of seasoned teachers who already have teacher's licenses, who have been in the classroom for 15 or 20 years, go through this program and really find it valuable. And we've even had administrators go through this program so that they can understand what they should be looking for when they enter into classrooms to observe their teachers. So we have both a good number of seasoned teachers with teacher licenses in this program, wanting to learn more about the liberal arts tradition, more about the Catholic liberal education tradition, and just wanting to hone their teaching skills and their confidence in the classroom. And for teachers who have done that, they have really come to view teaching as a calling, as a vocation in a fresh way. And so that's been really encouraging for us to see. And all of this is grounded in an authentically Catholic philosophy and vision of education. Everything we do is grounded initially in the 5 marks of a Catholic school, as it's articulated in this short little volume, The Holy See's Teaching on Catholic Schools. I'd recommend that volume to anybody attending this webinar. But we also place the divine logos at the center of education. We believe that at the very center of every Catholic school is a person, the person of Jesus Christ, who is himself the incarnation of the truth. And so all teaching and all learning of truth ultimately leads back to him. But we also teach and train teachers in the liberal arts, the trivium and the quadrivium, which we believe are the foundational arts for developing intellectual virtue and enabling the study of all the other subjects in a school's curriculum. The liberal arts liberate students from ignorance, from untrained passions, from public opinion and propaganda, and it helps to free them to become the students that God created them to be. So that's what we're referring to when we use the word liberal. We're not talking left-wing, right-wing politics. We're talking a form of education that frees people to be who God created them to be within this tradition of education. So we place great value on intellectual virtue and on academic rigor, and yet we think there's a lot more than just intellectual virtue in a robust Catholic education. We also think that teachers must be able to shape the loves and the affections of their students so that they can come to delight in the right things in the right way. It is our conviction that we cannot teach meaning or objective moral reality unless we are able to shape a student's imagination and unless we are able to shape what C.S. Lewis in The Abolition of Man referred to as their sensibilities, their heart. And so we help teachers in very concrete ways to focus on how to spark a sense of wonder in the classroom, how to infuse learning with joy, and how to set before students what is true, what is good, and what is beautiful. We want teachers every day that they are in the classroom to put before their students something beautiful to behold. And we go through all sorts of examples and practices with them on that. So you can tell that our approach to Catholic liberal education is not to view the Catholic faith as a mere frosting. Instead, we train our teachers to view the Catholic faith more like yeast that works its way into and is integral in every inch of the educational cake. It is not something that just sits on top, but it helps to determine the very nature of the cake itself. And finally, we do all of this with a sense of community. We believe that education is relational, and we want that to be true for the CEFC program. So we gather our teachers together in person. When we do that, we share meals together. We worship together. We celebrate the Eucharist together. We take field trips together. We discuss seminar texts together. And during those times and all throughout the year, our cohort members are sharing prayer requests and praying for each other by name. And so this gives us a sense that that our teachers are going through this process together as members of a community. And we're convinced that that is a necessary form for the content that we want to deliver. So with that, I want to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. DeAnn Stuart, who will tell us a little bit more about what our teachers study and how to apply.
Hi, everyone. So glad to join you. DeAnn Stuart. I've been in education in one form or another for a little over 25 years, and I'm so excited to be part of this initiative. As Ryan told you before, I'm the head of the national cohort, and I get to share my screen with you and tell you a little bit about what we teach in this program. So give me just a second. So what do we teach in this program? We teach things that probably sound familiar to a lot of educators, things like classroom management, lesson planning, communicating with parents, literacy, numeracy, how to write quality assessments. So we do all those things, but because we take the Catholic intellectual tradition and Christian anthropology as our starting point, all of these things are going to look different. So our program consists of 5 courses of study. Course 1 is the virtuous classroom. Now, a virtuous classroom is one that is orderly and beautiful. So we teach teachers strategies, concrete strategies for maintaining classrooms that are orderly, but also for disciplining individual students in a way that respects their dignity and also challenges them to develop the virtues they need to master themselves. Because it's only when they've developed those virtues that they can most fully serve God here and then enjoy Him forever in the life to come. So classroom management isn't just about managing chaos. It's about cultivating virtue. Course 2, it's on pedagogy. So pedagogy, you're very familiar with this term, most likely. You may be a little less familiar with its Greek origin, which means to lead a child. And so in our program, we ask to lead a child where? And that's where the subheading comes from. We lead that child from wonder to wisdom to worship, I'd like to add. So Ryan said a little bit about how we give concrete strategies to teachers. All these strategies rooted in Christian anthropology for evoking wonder in a student. We teach them multiple strategies for being able to do that, grab their hearts and their attentions there at the beginning of the lesson. And then whatever the content of the lesson may be, we show them how to construct a focused lesson, focused units, focus, scope, and sequence. But how do we structure that focused lesson on whatever, 2-digit addition, osmosis, Charlemagne, whatever it might be. So we draw them with wonder. We show them how to construct a focused lesson, and all toward what end? Toward the end of acquiring some kernel of wisdom. So what truth is apparent in this lesson? What does it say about who we are as human beings or about this world that we live in? And of course, ultimately, we want them to grow in wisdom about themselves and about the world, but we want for that to be directed toward God, toward our Catholic faith. And so we try to habituate in teachers this movement of wonder, guiding them to wisdom, and then drawing them up to worship. So how does this lesson connect to our Catholic faith? So that we give those students 1,000 touch points that connect back to the Catholic faith. What does it reveal about God and the way that He ordered the world? In this course, in the pedagogy course, we do have teachers work through concrete exercises to help them through this process and make them better, more effective Catholic teachers. And we also give them templates so that they can really grow in the habit, like I said before, of teaching this way. And we look at how to construct quality assessments so that they can evaluate the effectiveness of their pedagogy. Course 3 is on the trivium. This includes robust instruction in literacy, the science of literacy. So in the trivium deals with the arts of language, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. These are foundational liberal arts. And so we guide our lower school teachers through the science of literacy. So how do you teach students to read? For the upper grades, we have teachers, we instruct them in how to teach students how to read increasingly challenging texts well. So there's how to read and then how to read well. So we have that literacy component in the trivium course. But we also offer some formal instruction in those arts of grammar, logic, and rhetoric, the first 3 of the liberal arts. Course 4 is on the quadrivium. So in this course, teachers will explore the arts of number and space. So the 4 remaining liberal arts that we'll focus on and use those as avenues for this, for course 4, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy are the traditional 4 liberal arts, remaining liberal arts. And everyone takes these courses. Everyone takes the course on the trivium, the course on the quadrivium, whatever it is that they might teach. Because we know that we don't want lopsided human development in our students. We don't want students who say, I just specialize in reading or I just specialize in math. We want well-rounded development in them. And so our teachers seem to come alive when they get to experience a taste of this well-rounded development for themselves when we take everyone through a course in the trivium and then in the quadrivium, so that everybody gets to dabble in it. And then all the while, I want to come back to how concrete all of this is. We're giving them strategies as they go along and modeling. We have veteran teachers who model through our presentations, through everything all the instruction that we give them, how they can do this in the classroom. And then finally, we have course 5, our foundations course, Faith and Reason, the Foundations of the Catholic Intellectual Tradition. We have sessions of course 5 sprinkled throughout the entire 18-month program, but we really will zoom in on it during that final semester of our 18-month program, where they'll take a deep dive into who is the human person, what are we made for, and then what does our Catholic intellectual tradition have to say about education. So hopefully by this point, you are thinking this program sounds totally awesome. How much does it cost, and what are my next steps? So let me tell you about that. Take you to our webpage. If you go to our main webpage, go to this formation tab, you can go down to the Catholic Educator Formation and Credential program, and you'll find a lot of really valuable information there that you may have already seen. I'm going to scroll down to a few things. If you want some more detailed information, you can click right here for our CEFC brochure. If you want to hand brochures out to teachers on your campus or to principals in your diocese, then that's a really good resource for you. It gives you a schedule of what dates the national cohort at least will be meeting, our 3 dates. And then it also gives you here the cost for the 2025-2026 program. Now, how much does this program cost? It is $5,900 in tuition. That covers all 18 months, plus $1,975 for room and board for the 3 weeks that we meet in person. And a full 2/3 of our contact hours end up taking place during those 3 in-person weeks. So we make the time rich and very, very valuable. But that will cover room and board for all 3 of those weeks. Now, if you're thinking, I'm a Catholic school teacher, and is there any way that we can get some tuition assistance? We can work with you, and we've worked with teachers in the past to secure title funds to pay for part or full tuition. Even some title programs will pay for lodging and meals. So we'll work with teachers to be able to find some funding if it's available for them to help pay for this cost. We also had a very generous teacher in our last cohort who loved the program so much that she and her husband donated one full scholarship, which we might parcel out into some individual partial scholarships for teachers in this next cohort. So, and then we'll continually work on trying to find more sources of funding. But we want this to be available for as many teachers as possible, because it really is such a formative, joyful program that teachers have told us time and time again leaves them with the sense of feeling empowered to go back into the classroom and to teach more effectively and to love it more deeply. So that's the cost. If this interests you, or if you know of somebody that it might interest, we encourage you to go ahead and apply now. If you click on this button right here, it'll take you directly to the application. We do accept people on a rolling basis, so we have rolling admissions until the cohort fills, but we do have a limited number of seats. It's limited to 40 teachers, so we do encourage you to apply as soon as possible. Now, with that, I will stop sharing and open the floor to questions.
Yeah, so we have a couple of really great questions in the Q&A, and I wanted to start it off with, could we elaborate a little bit more on the difference between the local and the national cohorts?
Great. Yes, and I'll take that. So, hi, everybody. I'm Allie Barnes. Whereas DeAnn is in charge of the national cohort, I head up the Oklahoma cohort and the Colorado cohort. So, the Oklahoma cohort is very similar to the national cohort and follows that schedule. We meet in person at the very beginning. We meet weekly online for Zoom sessions. We meet again in the middle of the year, and we meet at the end in person. The Denver and Colorado Springs cohort is a bit different. We meet in the beginning for our Cornerstone workshop, and then we meet monthly, one Saturday per month in person rather than on Zoom weekly. So that's the difference there. And I should note too that those who are on the call and are interested in the Oklahoma cohorts or the Denver and Colorado Springs cohort, that application page is different. So you would fill out a different application, not the one that you're finding where DeAnn showed us. So if that's you, please contact me and I can connect you with the application page that you'll be needing. I'm at abarnes@catholicliberaleducation.org. So it's abarnes@catholicliberaleducation.org. And I'll put that in the chat here too.
And for those Oklahoma and Denver cohorts, the Oklahoma cohort is just for Catholic school teachers teaching in the dioceses in Oklahoma, right? And then Denver is just for teachers who are teaching.
That's right. Yes, that's right. So Oklahoma, all of the Catholic schools in Oklahoma are recognizing the credential in lieu of a state license, which is wonderful and amazing. But that means they would come to us for their very own cohort in Oklahoma, similar in Denver and Colorado Springs.
So right now the national cohort serves the other teachers who are interested from any other dioceses.
Thank you. Another question that we have is, would it be reasonably feasible for a teacher to be teaching full-time, completing this program, and being a part-time online MA student? In other words, in general, what does the time commitment of the CEFC program look like for a teacher?
I'll go ahead and take that. We try to concentrate a lot of our contact hours during those 3 in-person weeks, as I said before, and then we do limit how much time teachers have to spend working on the program while they're actively teaching during the academic semesters, because we know how limited teachers' time is. So we'll meet one evening a week during the academic semester, usually for just 1 hour, in order to continually form our teachers, to give them something they can then go and apply immediately to their classrooms. And then we ask that they show us what they've done so we can give them some feedback. So I would say that it's most intensive during those in-person times, but it is spread out over the course of the entire 18 months. So I know different people are able to manage different amounts of commitments. I know that we have in the past found that teachers who were trying to do, we do have a current teacher who's in a master's program and doing CEFC and teaching, but that has proven to be a little much for a lot of teachers. So that's what we've seen so far.
Thank
I
you
just
so
saw
much.
one question in the chat asking if we are open to creating new diocesan cohorts, and if so, how many students do you require? So yes, we are. We have some cities that we anticipate launching new cohorts in the next year or two. And yes, we are completely open to that and would be excited to talk about that with you. Financially, we tend to require between 25 and 30 teachers to make it financially viable to designate a director to that cohort and to make that possible. But as in Denver partnering with Colorado Springs and with Oklahoma City partnering with Tulsa, neighboring dioceses can come together to form one cohort. So if you are concerned that your diocese might not be able to meet that threshold, it might be worth talking to some neighbor superintendents and seeing if together you could get there.
Thanks, Ryan. That was going to be the next one I bounced to anyway. There's also another one that showed up in the chat that I thought was a good question, and that's how do teachers, I'm going to rephrase it a little bit, how do teachers receive feedback in the program? The particular question in the chat is feedback from a supervisor, but how does that look from y'all's experience across different cohorts?
Yeah. Did you talk about maybe the observation program,
Mm-hmm.
Allie or DeAnn?
Sure. I'll talk about that, Ali, unless you want to jump in. Um, what we do for the national cohort is, and then Ali can talk about Oklahoma and Denver, is we have teachers record a lesson, since our teachers are spread out all over the nation and some even from South or Central America. We have them record a lesson and then they meet with their observer and then we give them a debrief, usually, very hefty debrief, 45 minutes to an hour long, when we just talk through each part of the lesson. We tell them some things they can work on, things that they're doing well, because sometimes teachers don't recognize what it is that they're doing well. So you give them both kinds of feedback. And our teachers have said that this is one of the most valuable parts of the program, because they actually have seasoned teachers observing them and giving them very specific feedback.
Thank you, DeAnn. Another question that we had, and I know you kind of talked about this in your presentation, is what are some skills that teachers develop through the program? And maybe an anecdote of some particular growth that you've seen from one of our cohorts or from one of our groups.
I'll start. I have an idea right now. We had a brand new teacher who enrolled in the cohort, and so we have our weekly meetings, and he would often stay on after the meeting was over just to ask for specific advice, or he would log on a little early to see if, for any extra help that he could get. And it was really encouraging to me to see what his principal said when he sent in a formal recommendation for this teacher. It was just talking about the extraordinary growth that he'd seen in this teacher over the course of the year, specifically when it comes to classroom management, because we know that during those first few years of teaching, the learning curve for classroom management to learn it, it's very, very steep. And he would ask questions like he'd say, I have this class of 6th grade boys and I don't know what to do with them. And so we would problem solve. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? And he implemented it into his classroom. I would say that I also saw in him his personal growth. At the very beginning, he wasn't sure how to structure a lesson, but by the end, his lessons were beautifully constructed. And to hear the feedback from this principal over the course of just 1 year, a little over a year and a half, the principal was just amazed at the growth that he saw in every aspect of this teacher's of his craft, because that's what we try to teach them. It's the beauty of the craft, developing the craft. And it's why you have to have craftsmen teach these teachers how to develop that craft. And so I know ICLE is very particular about making sure that these are seasoned teachers who are instructing the folks in the program.
I would just add to that, it's actually really beautiful to see the mix of new teachers and teachers who have quite a bit of experience come through the program, because they bring, different life experiences to that. Many of the teachers that we've had that have a lot of experience have benefited from being able to teach in new ways. And so that's been wonderful to see them getting these tools from the Catholic intellectual tradition and bringing new life to their schools. I had a teacher say recently, she had a lot of experience in her background and she was new to this vision. And she said, after I presented, she said afterwards, beauty, I never thought about bringing beauty into the classroom. Framing things with the transcendentals can bring joy and wonder and the faith and bring it alive for teachers with little or quite a bit of experience.
If I could add just one more thing, it looks like Brian wants to add something. This will be very quick. He mentioned community, and the teachers consistently say, and this is something that we can't fabricate, it's just the Holy Spirit breathing life into his body, that when these teachers come together, yes, we give to them, but there's this beautiful spirit that you see it's almost palpable, the Holy Spirit active within that body of teachers, within the cohort. So the sense of community is also really profound.
Just thinking about the types of skills that we provide training in, a lot of them are skills that have kind of been thrown out with modern progressive approaches to education. We're recovering the importance of memory and memory practices. We're recovering sentence diagramming. We're recovering the importance of imitation for learning and how to lead students to reproduce and understanding in their own minds, recovering the wonder with numbers, and math, recovering history rather than social studies. There's just a lot of the things that pass as modern trends today. We're going back and recovering treasure that has been lost, and then training our teachers in how to renew it again.
Thank you, Ryan. There's actually another question here referring back to your presentation. You were speaking about the more compromised Catholic schools that aren't really on board. Does a CEFC credentialed teacher face a headwind if his or her Catholic school has already been compromised, as you described? How have we seen that before, and how have we supported these teachers?
We do see that, I would say, especially in the national program, where perhaps a teacher at their school recognizes that they want something deeper, and they admit to us, like, this is not being taught in this way at our schools. I'm having to explain it to my colleagues, but it's kind of neat to hear them tell stories of going back from their in-person gatherings and sharing what they've learned, having teachers notice how they decorate their classroom differently, just small little things that they notice. And so that's why we feel that having partners in community is important, because sometimes it can feel lonely. And there's not a lot of support at their schools, but they know that a whole cohort is praying for them and is going to ask about how they're doing, the next week that they're together on Zoom, and then the next time they're together in person. So I don't know if either of you want to add more detail to that.
That was great.
Next
I see
question.
that somebody asking about, does there happen to be a Philadelphia cohort?
Mhm.
Not yet, but we are certainly open to that. And just for those from Pennsylvania to be aware that there might Pittsburgh might want to be talking with Philadelphia, because there might be some interest and possibility of collaborating there in Pennsylvania. That would be really exciting.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I'm going to also try to sum up a couple of questions together into one mega question here. We have a few questions about background study and like education coming into the program. We require a bachelor's degree, but is there any other kind of education that would be wise for teachers to have before going into the program? We have someone asking if we need to know Latin or Greek or anything like that going in. What kind of work do teachers do prior?
They
A
have
love for students.
yours is best, Ryan. I like your answer. But we do assign some reading, and so we guide them through some of the seminal texts, and over the course of the 18 months, they learn a lot.
But yeah, but they don't need to have kind of any specialty or major or Latin or anything like that coming in. We presume that they are beginners, and we walk them through and introduce them to all of those things.
Awesome. I'm also seeing here, just kind of to go back to the local cohort questions, is there a Nashville or Tennessee cohort? And then also to group in with that, are the in-person intensives also at the Augustine Institute for Oklahoma City and Denver, or where do we hold those?
Right. In Oklahoma City, they're currently being held at the Archdiocesan Pastoral Center. So that's where we hold those for the Oklahoma City and Tulsa dioceses. And then in Denver, we host them we host them locally. So they're either at the Archdiocesan grounds or a nearby facility.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just note here as well, because I'm seeing other people asking about other locations for cohorts. We currently only have a national cohort, a Denver and Colorado Springs cohort, and a Oklahoma City, Tulsa cohort. So if you are in a different diocese, we don't currently have a cohort for y'all, just so we don't go through every diocese in the United States.
Yet.
Yet. But yeah, at this point, we only have cohorts in those locations. Although that I guess that does also open a question is if teachers are interested in having a cohort in their diocese, are there steps that they could take?
Yeah, I think the first thing to do would be to get in touch with with your leadership, with your principal, your superintendent. Ultimately, we want to get the bishop on board in a diocese and have the bishop lead that charge. But again, ICLE has programming for all of those constituents. And so if they don't know what it is or they're unsure of it, we welcome them to find out. We can get them on our superintendent monthly calls. We can invite their pastor to an upcoming priest gathering. We can explain it to them and provide support where we can if this is something that they would like to pursue in their diocese.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ryan. We do have someone raising their hand. Robin, I'm going to allow you to ask your question verbally.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just maybe it's been asked already, I'm not sure, but can a teacher be part-time and do this because maybe the school doesn't have a full-time position for them?
Absolutely. So the reason why the teacher has to be actively teaching at the time in the classroom is because so many of the assignments require the teachers to turn around and apply what they've just learned to the classroom. But as long as that teacher has a regular group of students,
Okay,
they can apply all the lessons in their classroom.
perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm also seeing some questions just bouncing back to funding real quick. What is title funding? And I guess what is title funding?
So title funding, these are public funds. So there are certain public funds that are allocated to private schools for the sake of professional development and then other services within those schools. So any private school can apply for these title funds through their district office. So I think most of the teachers who end up getting title funds, and I'm not an expert on this, most of those who end up getting title funds to pay for the program end up applying. They ask their principals about it, how to go about applying for them, and then they will apply through the local district's title office. And we have paperwork that they can submit and everything.
And in terms of the cost, so it's tuition is around $5,900 per teacher, and then there's room and board for the in-person events, which is roughly $2,000. So all told, it's about $8,000. And then there are, opportunities for schools to help out in sending a teacher. There's the funding opportunities that DeAnn just spoke of.
And I should add for the Oklahoma cohort and the Denver cohort, that's different. So the funding is handled differently. The dioceses have been very generous in helping teachers. So again, contact me and I can tell you more about the funding for those two cohorts.
And I did also, while we're on Denver, see real quick, will Colorado Springs also meet in the archdiocesan location, or do they meet separately?
Yes, it's one cohort, so we all meet together in Denver.
Perfect. Let's see. We've got so many questions in here. so many to work through. We might not be able to get to everyone's questions as an FYI because we do only have 5 minutes left. However, I do think that this is a good question here as well. Just would a teacher be taking, I'm assuming this is in relation to the observations. Do teachers take the videos of themselves in the classroom with their entire class to submit, or do they create something unique?
We want to see teachers teaching their regular students. We want to see just a normal lesson because that's where we can provide the most valuable feedback. I
Thank
think
you.
that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it does as well. If anyone has any additional questions, oh, actually, one just came in here. Um, and I think it's also applicable. What if you're teaching at a public school? Like for teachers, what if you're a public school teacher, maybe interested in going into Catholic teaching? Um,
DeAnn, have we had that before?
Yes, so we have had some people who have applied who were teaching at charter schools or who were homeschooling their kids. And what I usually tell them is that we encourage you to go ahead and apply. The application does not take very long. But because ICLE's mission is dedicated to renewing our Catholic schools, that we do give priority to teachers who are actively teaching in Catholic schools. Some people have asked, do I already have to have a teaching position in order to apply? And very often I'll say no. Well, really, every time I say no. All that matters is that by the time you begin this program, that you have a teaching position. So we'll usually ask them, go ahead and apply, and we'll have you go through the entire application process. But if you get accepted into the program, it will be contingent upon finding a teaching position, either full or part-time, at a school that next year.
Awesome. Thank you, DeAnn. Well, we've only got a couple minutes left, and I know we also wanted to speak briefly about our upcoming webinar as well. I can include the link to all that in the comments section. Do you all have any final comments that you'd like to say to our attendees?
Yeah, well, I think on the website that DeAnn showed you, there is an opportunity to send an inquiry if you have a question and it didn't get answered today. You can just pop onto our website, onto the CEFC page, and send us a question, and we'll be happy to answer that for you. ICLE does have a number of webinars coming up. Katie just posted the link in the chat. The next one will be on March 6th, if you want to mark your calendars, at same time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And our academic dean, Peter Crawford, is going to be talking about the joyful calling, discovering purpose and community in the Catholic Liberal Arts School. So make sure that you attend that. And the enrollment cycle is yearly, so we would encourage you to apply soon if you want to get on this year. If for some reason you don't or you miss it, then it would be this time next year that you would be applying for that. And I think I saw the question. We encourage all of our teachers enrolled in the CEFC program to attend the national conference, and we do provide them discounts for doing that. So if anybody has not been to an ICLE national conference, it is filling up quickly, and so you would want to register for that very soon. It's a wonderful time, and I would highly recommend it to any teacher or administrator who are kind of getting their feet wet in this approach to education. It's a great time.
I just put our link to the national conference in the chat if you guys are curious and learning more or watching the video on that. Any other final comments, Ali or DeAnn? No?
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on a Tuesday afternoon. We really appreciate it. Please be in prayer for us and for the church, and please know that we are praying for you and the good work that you're doing in Catholic education. It's such a high calling, and we so need people who are passionate about it. So thank you for your interest and for the work you do to serve our church.